Hi, this is Jeff Curto, and welcome to episode number 174 of Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography. So, like I often say, like I did, in fact, in the last episode, I get email. I get a lot of email, and in this case, it wasn't an email, but a comment left on the cameraposition.com blog page from Fabricio Santos. And so Fabricio said, congratulations, Jeff, on your 10 years of podcasting. I'm currently at episode 141 after watching and listening to all episodes within the last couple of months. I have a wish for a quick episode. Could you talk a bit about the cover image for Camera Position? You've used it since day one, put it on t-shirts and mugs and the likes, and I even noticed that it's a crop from another image because it showed up on an old episode where you were talking about the importance of tagging images and you searched for the keyword clouds. But apart from that, I'd like to know why you picked it, what does it make you feel, and a bit of its history. Where is it, when did you make it, and how? I think it would be an easy way to briefly return 10 years in time. I think that's a great idea. And it's funny because I have thought about the Camera Position logo quite a lot. I certainly thought about it when I chose it for the logo for the Camera Position podcast, and I've thought about it quite a bit since then. And so it is worth talking about this idea, seeing where we came up with it, and then I'll also explain a little bit about the image and where it came from. So this image I chose as a Camera Position podcast logo partly because it's sort of the opposite of Camera Position. You know, so much of what we talk about in terms of camera position is what it is that we force the viewer to see. But in this case, it's a lone tree sitting on a hill, sort of silhouetted against the sky with some clouds in the background. And in this case, what I was really wanting to refer to is an essential image that I think every photographer makes at some point. Now, think about it. All of you out there who are photographers, all of you who have made images for a long time, I would be willing to bet that at some point in your history of being a photographer, whether it's a short history of a couple of months or a long history of many decades, that at some point you photographed a lone tree against the sky. At some point you did that. And every photographer, it seems to me, does that. And I'll put a few examples in the Camera Position blog and on the app PDF of other photographers, great photographers, photographers from the early days of the medium's history, photographers from more contemporary times who have felt the need to photograph the lone tree. The lone tree seems in some ways to be a metaphor for life perhaps, for growth, for one's position as a solitary figure in a vast and confounding world. The lone tree has always been in photography ever since its very beginnings. And so there was something about my wanting to place a lone tree photograph as the example of something that is common to all photographers, that somehow, for some reason, we all tend to find subjects that resonate with us. And there's something really wonderful about the fact that all of us at some point have photographed that lone tree. And I'll tell you what, if you haven't done it yet, you're going to at some point, just because somehow that subject compels us to make a photograph. So Fabricio also asked a bit about where the picture was made and why I made it. And I suppose I should start with why I made it, which is, I think, going back to this whole idea of the lone tree and our sort of compulsion to make this photograph of a lone tree. So it's not the first lone tree photograph that I'd ever made, and it's certainly not the last one, and obviously not the only one either, but there was a compulsion to make that lone tree photograph because I had noticed not only the tree itself, but I had thought at the time of making the photograph that, wow, there's another lone tree standing steadfast in the middle of an open field. The field itself is in my beloved Tuscany, a place that I love to spend as much time as I can, whether or not I'm teaching a photo workshop there. And it's really just outside of the town where I base my Tuscany photo workshops, the town of Pienza in southern central Tuscany, a little bit south of Siena. A beautiful, amazing town that sits right in the Val d'Orcia, the river valley of the Orcia River, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The entire valley is protected. So this lone tree presented itself late in the day, the sun behind some high and fairly heavy clouds, and I was at the time shooting with my Hasselblad camera with film before I had a digital back for that camera, which I have now. But shooting film, color negative film, and made that photograph of the lone tree. And there are several that I made playing with where the position of the tree was. And one became a favorite as I sort of edited through that take. And this is the one that I chose, this one that eventually made it to the camera position logo. And yeah, it is on t-shirts and coffee mugs if you go to the camera position blog and click on the links. If you have some interest in wearing camera position or drinking out of camera position coffee mug, you're more than welcome to grab that stuff. So the camera position logo, the lone tree, and where it came from. And I really appreciate Fabrizio asking that question. Thanks so much for asking, and thanks for listening. And I really find it great that there are so many of you listeners who are really just joining us and making your way through the Camera Position podcast archive, all of which is available at cameraposition.com and should be available as well in iTunes and most of the other podcast aggregators out there. But iTunes is probably the most popular. I think most of my downloads come through that and through the Camera Position app, which is also available. Thanks again for listening, and thanks Fabrizio for asking about the Camera Position logo, which gave me a chance to talk about the lone tree here on the podcast about the creative side of photography.